The first time I ate someone's grief, it was an accident. My aunt had just died, and my cousin couldn't stop crying at the funeral. She clutched her mother's wedding ring so tight her knuckles grew white. When she hugged me, she pressed the ring into my palm. "I can't look at it anymore," she said. "Just take it away." I slipped it into my pocket, and something strange happened on the drive home. A warm sensation spread through my gut, like I'd swallowed a shot of good whiskey. By the time I parked in my driveway, I felt freaking amazing, light, almost euphoric. Meanwhile, my cousin called to thank me. She'd finally slept through the night. "It's like a weight lifted," she said. I didn't make the connection until 2 weeks later. I was stress eating a gas station cherry cupcake, the kind with that nuclear red icing that stains everything it touches. The ring remained in my pocket, and when I pulled it out to look at it, some of that sticky icing smeared across the metal. Without thinking, I licked it clean, and when the ring touched my tongue, it dissolved, melting like cotton candy while that same warmth flooded my system, only stronger this time. Much stronger. That's when I understood what had happened. Somehow, I ate her grief. 5 years passed, and I turned it into a business. Not officially, of course. You can't exactly put "grief eater" on a business card. But word spread among the desperate. The process was simple. Bring me something that connects you to your dead loved one. Something that holds your pain. I consume it, and your grief disappears. I charged based on the intensity, $1,000 for a parent, $500 for a sibling, $250 for a grandparent. Pets were a flat $100. The pricing wasn't based on science, but on how much the grief would screw me up afterwards. But I didn't tell my clients what happened to their grief afterward. It didn't disappear. It lived inside me. I'd consumed the emotional trauma of 78 dead loved ones, and each one had left something behind, a whisper, an itch, a memory, that wasn't mine. I called them the chorus. Most days, I could handle them. They were just background noise, the mental equivalent of a TV left on in another room. But lately, they'd been getting louder. More demanding. The whispers had become conversations. Conversations had escalated into arguments. Pleas had replaced the arguments. Let us out. Let us see them. We miss them. I ignored them and kept eating. The warmth that followed consuming grief had become addictive, better than any drug I'd tried. And I'd tried plenty. The business was just an excuse to keep feeling that rush. Ever since I was a kid, I'd had the same recurring nightmare, being trapped inside my body, conscious but unable to move or speak, while something else controlled me from within. I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, grateful to be back in control. As I got older, the nightmares became less frequent, but more intense. The idea of being reduced to a passenger in my own flesh terrified me more than death itself. I'd rather cease to exist than exist as a prisoner inside my body. I never connected these nightmares to my new profession. Never saw the warning signs. Until it was too late. On a rainy Tuesday, a woman brought me her brother's baseball cap. He'd killed himself 3 months ago, and she hadn't slept well since. She passed me the cap with trembling hands. "Will it hurt?" she asked, her fingers still gripping the frayed edge. "Not you," I said. When she left, I locked the door and stuffed the cap into my mouth. The fabric dissolved against my tongue, releasing a bitter wave of sorrow that made my eyes water. I chewed faster. The sooner I got it down, the sooner the pain transformed into that familiar warmth. Except this time, something different happened. As the last threads disappeared down my throat, I heard a man's voice, clear as day, say, "Finally." And then my hands weren't my hands anymore. I tried to move them, but they stayed flat on the desk. I tried to stand, but my legs ignored me. My breathing sped up, but I wasn't the one speeding it up. "You've been so selfish," the voice said, "keeping us all in here, not letting us reach them." I tried to respond, but my mouth wouldn't open. Panic crawled up my spine as I realized what was happening. I was still here, still conscious, but I wasn't in control anymore. I was a passenger in my own body. My lifelong nightmare was unfolding in real time. The terror I'd woken from 100 times was now my waking reality. It's our turn now, another voice in my head said. A woman's voice, elderly, unfamiliar. You've kept us quiet long enough. The next few hours were a blur of psychological torture. My body moved without my permission. My hands opened drawers, searched through files, and found my client list. My mouth formed words that weren't mine, practicing different voices, different cadences. The chorus was figuring out how to drive. They let me surface just enough to feel the full horror of my situation. I screamed, but they pushed me back down into the darkness. The claustrophobia of being caged inside my skull was worse than any physical pain I'd ever experienced, like being buried alive but still able to watch the world through a window. By nightfall, they had a plan. I woke up on my kitchen floor surrounded by shattered glass. The clock said 3:47 a.m. I'd lost 9 hours. My phone showed 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. There was blood under my fingernails, and my mouth tasted like copper and salt. When I tried to stand, the world tilted sideways. What the hell? I said, but the words felt wrong in my mouth, like my tongue had forgotten how to shape them. We've been waiting for this, a voice that wasn't mine said. It was coming from inside my head, but it wasn't a thought. It was someone else, someone new, for someone who could hold enough of us. I stumbled to the bathroom and flipped on the light. In the mirror, my face looked wrong. My expressions weren't mine. My eyes focused and unfocused, as if someone else was controlling them. No, I said, this isn't happening. Oh, but it is, the voice replied. You've been so generous, making space for us. And now we're going to return the favor. My hand rose to my face, but I wasn't the one moving it. I tried to scream, but my lips stayed sealed. My worst nightmare had always been this, losing control. Being trapped inside while someone else drove. And now it was happening. This wasn't a metaphor or an exaggeration. This was the literal manifestation of the terror that had haunted my sleep since childhood, come to life in the waking world. Don't fight it, whispered another voice, a woman's this time. You'll just make it worse. And suddenly, the chorus wasn't background noise anymore. They were front and center, rising like a flood, and I was drowning in them. They took my body out for a test drive, and I remained conscious for every terrible moment of it. I saw everything through my eyes, but I was just a passenger now. They used my voice to talk to each other, arguing over who got control next. The brother should go first, said my mouth in a voice that wasn't mine. He's the newest. He hasn't seen his sister yet. My head nodded without my permission. 15 minutes each, said another voice using my vocal cords. Until we figure out a better system. They were dividing me up like I was a timeshare property. And there was nothing I could do but watch. The suffocating horror of being reduced to an observer in your own life is impossible to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. My body drove to the woman's house, the one who brought me her brother's cap yesterday. The chorus knew where she lived because her brother knew. They rang the doorbell. When she answered, her face transformed from confusion to terror. Tommy, she said. Hey, sis, my mouth said in her brother's voice. I'm back. She backed away, shaking her head. No, you're that person, the one who took the cap. What are you doing? It's complicated, my mouth said. But I needed to see you. To tell you, it wasn't your fault. They were using me like a puppet, and I couldn't even scream. Every childhood fear of possession, every adult anxiety about losing autonomy, it was all playing out in high definition. This wasn't just a nightmare, it was the nightmare that defined me. The woman was crying now. This isn't funny. You need to leave. Remember that summer at Lake Michigan? When I pushed you off the dock and you lost your new sunglasses? I said a fish took them. Her face went pale. Nobody knew about that. I did. I do. My hand reached out to touch her face. I need you to do something for me now. What? She whispered. I need you to give him something else. Something with more grief in it. My journal. It's under the mattress. No, I screamed inside my mind. Don't listen to him. But of course, she couldn't hear me. Nobody could. I sat trapped in the passenger seat of my body, watching as they used me to collect more grief, more memories, more souls to add to the chorus. Over the next 3 days, they visited 7 of my clients. Each time, the newest member of the chorus took control to convince their loved ones to hand over more grief-soaked items. Some were suspicious, but most were so desperate to believe they were communicating with their dead that they did whatever we asked. The pattern remained the same. My body would show up unannounced. My voice would say things only the dead person could know. My hands would take whatever they offered: journals, photographs, wedding rings, even clothing. And then my mouth would consume them, adding each new voice to the chorus. With each new object I consumed against my will, the chorus grew stronger. I felt myself shrinking, compressed into a smaller and smaller corner of my mind. The nightmare was consuming me, becoming more real with each passing hour. By the 4th day, I only got control for minutes at a time, usually when they were sleeping. During these brief windows, I tried everything to fight back: pain, alcohol, even smashing my head against the wall. Nothing worked. They just laughed and took back control, their voices overlapping in a discord of mockery. The only time they let me surface was when they needed me to know something. Like tonight, as my body lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling with eyes that no longer belonged to me. "We're going to the cemetery tomorrow," explained the first voice, my cousin's mother. "We've decided it's time to expand our operation." "What do you mean?" I thought at them. "Fresh grief is the sweetest," said another voice. "We're going to find those in mourning and offer our services directly." "No," I thought, "I won't let you." They laughed, a cacophony of unique tones all using my vocal cords. "You don't have a choice anymore. You're just the vessel now." And I realized they were right. I'd been so focused on fighting for control that I hadn't considered the alternative. Maybe I couldn't drive anymore, but I could still crash the car. While they debated their plans, I reached deep inside myself, to the place where my own grief lived. Not their grief, mine. The pain I'd been running from my whole life. I found the memory of my father's death, the overdose I discovered when I was 14. My mother's suicide 2 years later. The friend who died in my apartment while I was out buying more drugs for us. All the grief I'd never processed, never acknowledged, never consumed. I pulled it up like poison from a well, and before the chorus realized what I was doing, I turned it on them. Grief is a living thing. It grows, changes, evolves. And when you feed it, it gets stronger. My grief flooded through the mental space the chorus occupied. As the grief-feeding entities touched them, they screamed, entities unfamiliar with grief themselves. They'd only been the echoes, the impressions left behind. Never had they been the source. "Stop," they shrieked as my grief engulfed them. "You wanted grief," I told them. "Here it is. All you can eat." I forced every painful memory through my consciousness, every loss, every regret, every moment of despair I'd ever experienced. I'd spent my life running from these feelings, but now I embraced them. They were my weapons. The chorus splintered under the assault. Some voices faded altogether, others fragmented into whispers. A few of the strongest pushed back, trying to regain control, but the assault weakened them. For the first time in days, I moved my hand when I wanted to. I dragged myself to the bathroom, teeth clenched against the battle still raging in my mind. In the mirror, my face was gaunt, eyes bloodshot. I looked like I'd aged a decade. But they were my eyes again. "At least for now. This isn't over," hissed one of the remaining voices. "We'll wait. We'll grow stronger again." "No," I said aloud, my voice hoarse but my own. "You won't." I opened the medicine cabinet and removed a pocket knife. The one my grandfather gave me before he died. The one object I'd never consumed despite its grief potential, because it was too precious. I put it in my mouth. Cold metal touched my tongue. I bit down, feeling it dissolve. But this time, instead of swallowing the grief, I focused on my grandfather's love. The pride in his eyes when he gave me this knife. How he taught me to whittle. Wonderful memories accompanied the pain. The knife dissolved into a burst of emotion, not just grief, but joy, love, pride, nostalgia. And I realized my mistake all these years. Grief. It's not the pain that destroys you. It's all that love suddenly homeless, pounding on your ribcage, demanding somewhere to exist. And by consuming only the pain, I'd been creating these hungry ghosts, these fragments of people composed of sorrow. I opened my mouth, ready to tell them this revelation, but there was no response. The chorus had gone silent. For now, at least. The next morning, I purged my apartment of all the grief objects I'd collected over the years. Not by eating them, I'd never do that again, but by returning them to the families they belong to. Some people were angry when I showed up at their doors. Others were confused. A few even begged me to take their grief back. I couldn't. I wouldn't. Each returned object lifted a weight from me. With every tearful conversation, every awkward explanation, every apology, the voices in my head grew fainter. Not gone completely. I could still hear them sometimes, especially at night, but more like memories than invaders. I thought of them not as the people they once were, but as wounds that needed healing, both theirs and mine. For the first time in months, I slept without the old nightmare. The terror of being trapped in my own body had lost its power over me, not because it wasn't frightening anymore, but because I'd lived through the real thing and survived. I'd faced my worst fear and come out the other side. I stopped taking clients, moved to a different neighborhood, and changed my phone number. But people still found me, desperate for relief from their pain. Instead of eating their grief, I listened to their stories. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it wasn't, but it was honest work, at least. A week after my liberation, a man brought me his daughter's teddy bear. "Cancer. She was 7. Can you take it away?" he asked, tears streaming down his face. "I can't live with this pain." I sat with him for hours as he talked about her favorite ice cream flavor. The way she insisted on wearing mismatched socks. How brave she was at the end. Before he left, I told him the truth, that grief is just love with nowhere to go. That the pain he felt was the other side of how much he loved her. That healing doesn't mean forgetting. Keep the bear, I said. She loved it, and you loved her. Let it hurt for now. Eventually, it'll hurt less, but you'll still have the love. As he walked away clutching the bear, I felt something shift inside me. A few more voices in the chorus faded, replaced by a peaceful silence. I still don't know exactly what I am or how this strange ability works. But I know what I'm not anymore. I'm not a grief eater. I'm just someone who's learning, finally, to digest my own. I am the Blood King, craving the hearts of the innocent, yet all I feast on is the flesh of rats. I thought I'd rot like this forever. And then you came to me. And now you're sleeping by the fire, on an ancient, stained sofa, unroused by the castle that could spell your death. This night has found me restless, my bed empty. I am too occupied. The firelight flickers as I pace around you. I pause in genuflect beside your body. I tuck a tuft of golden brown hair behind your ear. Caress the side of your head. You smile in your sleep. Your heart is so pure that it wants to smile even when you are not conscious. Your dream is a loving world. I want to sink my teeth into you. You are incapable of malice, and I want to destroy you. We found each other on an evening veiled by a pulsing storm, the fiery sunset washed out by the mountain of bouldering clouds. The rain couldn't mask your sweet scent. This is why I don't come near the farms. Why I prowl at the edges of the woodland like a beast. I would have stayed away, as I always do. I tell and told myself I always will, but it is you who approached me. You couldn't know who I was, and that is my fault. A hand of death masquerading as a simple wanderer. The rest of my ilk know better. They know to drape themselves in curtainous black. To let their nails grow long like village pikes awaiting heads. Show off their fangs like reflective premonitions. But I could not. I never could. You invited me into the barn where you were working before the storm surprised you. I like the storms. I like to be swathed in mother's cold caress. Thrown around by this violence of hers, so unafraid to be itself, wild and unshackled. I feel free, but I could not refuse your sincerity. Inside the barn, the hay reflected the light of the hanging lanterns in a warm glow. My cold blood was warm. In your childish, smiley voice, you told me you were glad I was there. You thought you'd have to wait out the storm alone. You are so pure that you'd rather have the company of a stranger because you don't have to protect anyone from yourself. I was uneasy surrounded by hay, sturdy ladders, the smell of earth and toil, your smile. I hadn't left the seclusion of my castle in years. How many exactly is not a question to ask. Time to me is like an eye that never closes. I know only the vaguest sense of its passing by counting the generations of rats that skitter in the sewage below the stones. I left the night of the storm because I felt like brooding, and when I feel like brooding, I haunt the dark forest and stalk the creatures of the undergrowth. I stare enviously at their bloody maws, at the strips of flesh that hang from their teeth. Why wasn't I born an animal? Why was I cursed with a choice? Thunder pounded as if something had fallen against the sky, and your shoulders became tense. I offered you comfort. I told you, be still, you are safe. Why did I lie? I look at your sleeping face now and understand. You were frightened. Your smile was replaced by a quivering lip. I scared myself by wanting to do anything to bring it back, though I cannot look at it for long. Trapped in the barn, the only thing you were safe from was the storm. Your family came to find you between shrieks of lightning. You are too precious to lose. 14 years of life and you've filled up 1,000 times that amount of hearts with love. They didn't worry about the worker they'd lose, the hay that someone else would have to stack, the quail someone else would have to hunt. They worried about their son, their brother, and the love they'd have nowhere to place. A simple storm, common, worth all this fretting. My family would never have killed you. They would have tortured anyone who even thought to lift a finger against you. They'd eat their heart, slowly, whilst it still beat. They'd consume the blood from their popped vessels, a look of carnal justice searing profoundly in their eyes. Maybe then it is just for me to return to them, offer myself up to their hunger. I am their perfect meal. A husband beats his wife, then disappears under the black of night, under the black of talons. A jealous woman raises a match to the home of her lover's betrothed and is never found, only consumed. A sheriff says he will get away with it, he is the law, only to find himself at the mercy of life's only law, and that is death. My family craves the hearts of the depraved, of the horrid. They revel in the blood of the rotten. Humankind's unjust bullies. They say their hearts taste like fire because their souls came from the pits of hell. To some, they are angels of death's divine justice. To the evil, they loom over them like a black mirror reflecting their misdeeds. But my hunger never growled for the flesh of the wicked. When I was young, I explained to them that blood didn't interest me, and they said the hunger would come to me eventually. All the while I was blood deprived and sick and turning in bed at night because I craved the taste of the innocent. I was tortured because I never wanted to destroy it. But I cannot feast without destroying. I know I cannot have the impossible. I retreated to my castle, because we all have a castle nestled in the space between breaths. I clutched your note, written hastily in the barn whilst you thought I slept, but I was not. I heard every scratch of every letter, and read it in my mind's eye before ever gazing upon it. You are so perfect. You invited me to dinner in your home. You knew nothing of me save for my company in a storm. The skin of your cheek is so soft against the back of my finger. I lean in and breathe in your sleepy scent, our quietude shadowed by pulsing candlelight. I haunt over your little rest, your soft, round face, your smooth, shut eyes. My black-gray hair shadows over your cuddled body like the tattered funeral gown of a banshee. My claws pale the wooden top of the sofa. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt any of you, I only crave the pulsing life in your veins. I held your card firmly in my tired hands. I read your sweet scrawl 100 times. I pictured your smile between every word. The dimples that formed as you imagined sharing dinner with a stranger. The community you build with your kindness. Your empire of love. I wept upon the page. I dared not throw it into the fire, though surely that would stop the temptation. I threw myself down the stairs. My hair came undone and savage. I plunged into the muck of the sewers. I feasted on the blood of rats and wished that it was you. At dinner, I was a caged beast. I never knew a home could cradle this much love. I wished then so desperately that I could be full on the served food. Human sweet recipes, their savory burnt flesh. I wish there wasn't another creature inside me that craves and needs to be tended to. But even as I feasted on the warmly cooked venison, My stomach growled at your every action. You possess an honesty I can feel like the steam that rose from the wooden plates. Your innocence proven. You looked at me, this stranger, then to your father and mother for approval and received it, and suddenly I was too close. I needed to warn you, so I said it's not safe to be so near the woodland alone, there are thieves and bandits at the edges of the farmland path, and you responded after a grateful mouthful, my family is worth the risk, that there cannot be happiness without that danger. Not one without the other. I look at you and want the impossible. After dinner, you followed me into the woods. You asked what I do and I said I wander. You wondered if you could join me, if only you were back by dusk. What part of me is strong enough to refuse? After centuries of begging and waiting, of not choosing but instead longing, how could I? I saw this as fate, as karma finally allowing me this meal. I accepted, and we walked along the rotting logs. The wolves feasted on the skin of a white doe. You were unafraid. Nature is allowed to feast without question. You were impressed with my agility, with the way I knew the pathless forest. You smiled when we stopped at a river you had never seen, and I told you it was safe to drink. You only asked that I hold your arm as you leaned into the rapid for a taste of her lifeblood. Your pulse beat quick against my palm. You had never felt so refreshed. Bouncing with a fervor for adventure, you silently begged me to show you more and I obliged. We took a breath, and in the wing flap from one inhale to the other, we were enclosed in cold cobblestone and eternal candlelight that does not reach the boundless ceiling. In tattered drapery by wide stairways lined with spiraling handrails. In the sound of 1,000 rats pittering beneath the stones. By a couch with a tasseled blanket by a warm fireplace. Your look of worry nearly killed me. Suddenly, and frighteningly, I wanted to make you feel safe. I let my talons rest softly on your shoulder and said this is my castle. You meekly asked the center of my chest if I was a vampire. I told you the truth. I will not lie to you again. You found my eyes and smiled. I wish I could live in a castle, you said, then ran to the stairs and laughed at their enormity. I haven't given you a reason to hate me, but the swimming creature of self-hatred cannot let me believe anyone couldn't. Yet you ran to me and grabbed my wrist. Show me around, you cheered, and I obliged. I took you to the tall spires that overlook an impossibly deep gorge. My reading room with centuries of collected knowledge and a telescope that spots every star. You heard the rats and said, at least you're not alone. You were tired by the end of it and asked to be brought home. I lied to you and said we couldn't travel back until morning. You would have to sleep here. Okay, you said, and I showed you to the couch with the blanket by the fire. Good night, you said, and wrapped your arms around me. I have never felt the warmth of the sun, but I believe this is what it feels like. My teeth are inches from your neck. I dare not let them touch. I pace around this ancient couch. I count every one of your sleepy breaths. I stare long enough at your swannish smile, your dove-white teeth that crest the ends of your lips when you yawn. Every time you turn and you grasp the tassels at the end of my blanket, my heart rolls over. I picture your fingers entwined with mine when the white threads are in your grip. Once more, I lean in close to you from behind the sofa, hovering over your rest like the death of old, and whisper my dilemma into your dreams. I shut my eyes, and your smell makes me dream that I've already consumed you. I've already tasted the sweetness of your perfect blood. I've seen your insides bared to the air, my sight gaining admittance to every part of your body, unearthed and ready to be devoured. And I've sunk my teeth into your neck, your chest, your wrists, and below. Chewed on the delicate softness of your skin. In my mind, I've already sated the centuries-long hunger and gotten away with it completely. No one would find their stake through my heart in this castle. The wait is finally over. The taste of rat fur stuck between my teeth is forever forgotten. The scent of urine, mildew, feces and bile banished from memory. Your blood in my cells an everlasting memorial of what the world has lost. You make a noise in your sleep like a quiet puppy, and I'm reminded of your embrace. Could I feed on this invisible force? I feel full but hungry. I know that if I sink my talons into the back of your head and puncture the little nape of your neck with my fangs, the craving will be sated. But I will be shattered. Empty from the tears I will cry for having destroyed something beautiful. That is what I think of as I retire to bed, as I leave you asleep on the couch by the fire. Your trust. I can feed on you until it doesn't feel like feeding, it just feels like love. In the morning, I will let him go. Tristan stirred the sickly green tea in his mug, watching the bag bob up and down in murky suspension. He took a sip, cringed, and grunted in disgust. Far from being satisfying, he thought it tasted like wet grass in regret. He sighed and left the break room, entering the office corridor and pressing the elevator button with the same tired resignation he'd applied to his third cup that morning. The mirrored elevator doors reflected a man worn thin, tired eyes, and a mouth set in a permanent downturn. He tried not to look at the strands of premature gray creeping over his ears. He took another sip of his matcha, forcing himself to swallow, trying not to think of how closely the drink resembled something he once scraped off the wheels of his lawnmower. Sighing heavily, Tristan glanced at his watch. He'd had back-to-back meetings all morning and hadn't felt needed for any of them, having so far only sat silently, taking notes, and nodding as higher-ups talked in circles for an hour while ultimately saying nothing. Just a few more years, he reminded himself for the millionth time. A few more years proving yourself, then you'll be promoted to manager, then director, then you'll have made it. He took another sip of matcha and grimaced, struggling between forcing himself to swallow or spitting it out. It was a few moments before he noticed the old man who had come to stand beside him, waiting for the elevator. The old man looked sideways at Tristan and grinned. Just switched to tea, eh? Tristan forced himself to finally swallow and nodded. Yeah, the old man chuckled and said, that look on your face, oof. You're a coffee guy, am I right? Tristan examined the old man's face. He was ancient, likely pushing 90. But he wasn't a senior executive or even on the board. Tristan had memorized all their faces. Not really in the mood to make small talk with some random old guy, Tristan just nodded. Thought so, the old man continued conversationally. Let me guess, it wasn't your idea. Tristan frowned down at the tea in his hand and said, my girlfriend suggested it. Ah, another young pup just doing as he's told, the old man chuckled again. It's a shame you don't know how to think for yourself. Tristan bristled slightly at the remark, but didn't want to cause a scene at work by telling this guy off. So he forced himself to remain silent by drinking more matcha. The old man looked sideways at him and shook his head in disappointment. Nothing. Pity. I hoped you had more spine than that. Tristan turned to face the man, his brows pressing together as he clenched a fist. What's your problem? Tristan demanded angrily. The old man laughed. That's more like it. I knew there was still someone alive in there. The old man poked Tristan in the chest and laughed again. Tristan sneered and turned back to the elevator, wondering just what the hell was taking the damn thing so long. You'll be waiting a long time if you just stand here, the old man said. Feel free to take the stairs, Tristan snapped. I don't mean the elevator, kid, the old man said, suddenly serious. Your goals, your dreams, I assume you have some. Let me tell you, no one ever got anywhere by just waiting. You gotta find it yourself. Yeah, well, no one's told me where else to look yet, so, Tristan replied coldly. And you're just waiting to be told, Want the world to just hand you everything you want. That's the problem with you kids. You think your dreams just come true on their own. Tristan exhaled sharply, having had enough of being lectured by a stranger of no importance. He opened his mouth, ready to tell the old guy exactly what he thought. Then something was pressed into his chest. A folded sheet of paper, bronzed by time. Lucky for you, kid, the old man whispered conspiratorially. That's exactly how your world works today. What is this? Tristan asked suspiciously, his anger suddenly replaced with confusion. He carefully peeled back a corner of the folded paper. It looked like trash to him. He wondered if the old man was simply crazy. That, young blood, is a map, the old man said, pointing at the paper. A map to a priceless reward. I can tell by looking at you that you're not where you want to be in life. You follow that map, and your life will be forever changed. This is a joke, right? Tristan asked. You're giving me a treasure map. What is this, Uncharted? It's okay, young blood, the old man grinned. I didn't believe at first either, when a stranger handed me that thing. Took me 37 years to take it seriously. Wasted a lot of time. But if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. The intense sincerity with which the man spoke made Tristan uneasy, but at the same time he had felt a rush of excitement course through him. Even if the man was crazy, this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him, so why not play along? Okay then, Tristan began, slowly unfolding the supposed map, deciding to humor the man for now. What's this reward, and why didn't you take it yourself? No, boy, I did take it. The old man insisted. Everyone gets their own reward. That map you're holding will guide you to a place that exists on no other map. From there, it will show you the way through the maze. Maze, Tristan repeated, still not sure if he should be taking this seriously or not. Yes, or a labyrinth more like. The map will lead you to the center, where you can claim your personal reward, but there's a condition to claim it, you have to pay it forward. Tristan stared down at the map in his hands. It was so fragile, worn thin, and creased with countless folds, it felt like it was going to crumble to dust in his hands. The old man turned and began walking away just as the elevator dinged to announce its arrival. What you do next is up to you, but take some free advice, don't waste half your life wondering about it. Over the following days, Tristan kept telling himself the old man was crazy. A treasure map, ridiculous, but a part of him was intrigued. Even more so when he asked around the office for the old man and no one seemed to have ever seen him. He couldn't really explain why he decided to listen to the old man in the end, but Tristan left his home and began his search. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He took all the vacation days he had, then took off. After weeks of travel, all doubts about the map vanished as he found the place it led to. Tristan stood in a forgotten valley as the sun began to fall behind the horizon, looking in awe at the towering, dark walls before him. They stretched infinitely to the left and right of where he stood, fading into the dwindling light in the distance and even stretching into the darkening sky. An archway towered over Tristan, a gaping mouth that marked the entrance to this place. Tristan almost expected lightning to split the sky. How could this monolith go undiscovered? Who had built it and why? These questions and countless more swirled around Tristan's mind like a hurricane, but they didn't matter. Not when he was this close. He had doubted that this whole adventure would lead to anything, but there was no denying it now. Tristan turned the map over in his hands, searching the back and the corners for what to do next, but there was nothing. The old man had told him the map would also guide him to the center of the labyrinth, but Tristan saw nothing that would help him. The rest of the way. Find me, a voice suddenly whispered in the wind. Tristan jumped so much he nearly tore the map in half. He turned on the spot and searched for whoever had spoken, but he was in an empty field. There wasn't another person in sight. Find me, the voice whispered again, more urgently this time. Tristan turned again as he realized where the voice was coming from. It was speaking from within the labyrinth. A voice born on the wind that breathed out of the labyrinth's depths. Swallowing his nerves, Tristan took a hesitant step into the labyrinth. The world exhaled, everything fell silent. Glancing over his shoulder, Tristan's face paled in an instant. The massive archway he had just stepped through had vanished. Instead, he was staring at a section of wall made of flat dark stones that towered overhead, disappearing into the sky. Tristan stumbled forward and pressed his hand against the wall, pressing hard and breathing fast. No, 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 Tristan muttered in a panic as he felt all around the wall, looking for a way to get back out, but to no avail. After a few minutes of fruitless efforts, Tristan sat down in the dirt with his back against the wall, wondering what he should do now. He took several slow, deep breaths and managed to ease his sense of panic. As he calmed down, he began to examine the area around him. There were 3 paths, leading left, right, and directly ahead of him. Each one stretched into shadows. Tristan looked down at the useless map in his hands. To his shock, the map had changed. The instructions that had been there, that had led him to the labyrinth's entrance, had gone. Now there was a detailed drawing of the labyrinth itself. As Tristan watched, he saw that the illustration was still growing, the black lines spreading as though sketched by numerous invisible hands. As Tristan watched in awe, the black ink filled the page until the full labyrinth was drawn out, an intricate spider's web, with a large empty square at its center. "Find me," the voice whispered once more. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Tristan swallowed hard as he tried to wrap his head around what was happening, then nodded once as if he just convinced himself to continue. The map clearly marked the center of the labyrinth, and Tristan noticed tiny dots following the path to his left. Without another moment of hesitation, Tristan turned and followed the directions, moving quickly, but cautiously, into the hidden depths. As Tristan followed the map's instructions, he heard the grinding of stones frequently and could swear that whenever he looked at the map, it had changed slightly. There was no way of knowing what the other halls contained, but he could hear things lurking in darkness, stomping, and slithering out of sight. He was certain they could hear him too. Maybe even smell him. He didn't want to think about what would happen if he wandered down the wrong path. There came a point, after hours of wandering, where Tristan's path split into two corridors. The map clearly told him to go right, but Tristan felt a strong pull to go left instead. He had no idea what was down that path, he had no reason to veer off the safe route and pursue whatever was down that way, but the desire was almost overwhelming. He took a single step to the left, staring wistfully into the darkness. "There's something incredible down there," he thought. Whatever strange force was calling to him felt as familiar as going home after a long time away. It called to him, not in words, but in a way he could feel, like a thought he didn't remember having. A memory he'd never lived. But it was as dark as any other path, and utterly, deathly, silent. Despite this, Tristan could almost swear the air felt warmer down that path. Tristan took another step forward, dreaming of what wonders might be that way. "Find me," the voice whispered again, louder. Tristan snapped out of his dreamlike state. He turned and hurried along the path the map told him to go, already forgetting about the alluring alternative route that had called to him. Tristan lost track of how long he had been walking, though it felt like days. He rounded another bend and saw the infinitely large hall widen, revealing a bright silver light. Tristan gasped slightly as he realized this was the center of the labyrinth. He'd made it. Stumbling forward, Tristan fell to his knees on the grass before a raised platform that marked the center of the maze. Wiping the sweat from his eyes, Tristan glanced around, taking in his unremarkable surroundings. The only thing in the courtyard to see was the platform in front of him and the tall shining object standing atop it. The light seemed to emanate from the object itself. It had an ornate frame made of silver, which twinkled enticingly. The frame held a simple full-length mirror. Tristan stared up at the mirror with growing confusion. Was this it? This was the prize. "Find me," the voice whispered again suddenly, this time with much more insistence. Tristan flinched at the sound, as it was louder than ever before. And it sounded as if it came from the mirror. This time, now he was so close, Tristan recognized the voice. It was his own, speaking out of the mirror with urgency. The hairs on his arms and the back of his neck stood on end as Tristan stared with wide eyes at the mirror. The surface seemed to shimmer like a small pond reflecting the light of a full moon. Tristan slowly moved closer, unblinking as he climbed onto the stone platform and stepped in front of the mirror. When he looked at his reflection, Tristan gasped. Where his reflection should have been, there was instead a strange yet familiar face. The old man from the office, who had encouraged Tristan on this adventure, stood in the mirror, looking out at Tristan with a hard and hungry gaze. "Hey young blood, you found me," the old man said with a grin. He spoke with Tristan's voice. "What? How?" Tristan stammered. What's happening?" Tristan suddenly felt an ice-cold sensation grip his chest. He gasped from the shock of it and clutched a hand to his heart as he stumbled, almost falling to his knees. Glancing up, he saw the old man in the mirror begin to change. His white hair began to fill with color, becoming light brown and thick. The wrinkles on his face began to fade and his skin became smooth. Tristan looked down at his hands and his breath caught in his throat. His skin was shriveling before his eyes, the color draining fast, his fingers curling like brittle twigs. His veins pressed against thin and papery skin, his hands weak and trembling. "Help," Tristan croaked, looking up at the old man in the mirror. But the old man didn't look old anymore. As Tristan stared, finally falling to his knees as his legs suddenly became too frail, he saw that the old man had become more youthful in only moments, becoming decades younger. What truly horrified Tristan, though, was the old man's new youthful face. It was his own. Tristan reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. He felt his cheeks had hollowed out and the skin around his neck and jawline seemed to hang loose from his bones. "Sorry, young blood," the man in the mirror said with Tristan's voice, now wearing Tristan's face. "You should have looked for yourself. The road not taken, am I right?" Tristan felt a sudden invisible force begin to pull him towards the mirror. He screamed and clawed at the stone platform beneath him, trying desperately to find something to grab hold of. Tristan felt himself being dragged towards the mirror and he screamed even louder, his eyes bulging out of his suddenly ancient face. He tried to crawl away, but the invisible force was too strong and his now aged body too weak. Looking back, Tristan stared in horror as his feet touched the mirror, but instead of hitting glass, they simply vanished inside, as if he had sunk his feet into a dark ocean. Screaming even louder, Tristan thrashed and tried to pull himself free. He desperately tried to grab hold of something. He dug his fingers into any crack in the stones he could find. His fingernails snapped off as he was dragged with irresistible force, leaving thin trails of blood on the stone as he continued to claw for help. The man in the mirror, who now looked exactly like Tristan had, watched as Tristan slowly sank into the mirror. Tristan screamed the whole while, thrashing and clawing at the ground as first he sank into the mirror up to his knees. Then his waist. Tristan still screamed and flailed when he was in up to his chest. Finally, the screaming stopped as Tristan's head vanished into the mirror, though one hand still protruded through the mirror, bloody and frail, searching wildly for something to grab onto, until even that had gone. Once the labyrinth's courtyard was silent once more, the man who had taken Tristan's visage pressed his hands on his side of the mirror and pushed, emerging easily from the mirror and stepping out into the cool air. He turned around and looked back into the mirror, admiring his reflection. With a smirk, the man smoothed out his new hair. He then looked down at the ground and saw the ancient map. With a grin, the man reached down and picked it up and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he turned and walked away, whistling casually as he vanished into the darkness. They used to pray to Una, chant her name by moonlight, offer sacrifices to her image, open veins in her honor that would flood over root and burl till blood soaked the greedy dirt. It had been lovely. Una lifted her hand, the shackle of cold iron tight against her wrist, burning like a hot brand, and moved her black token to jump a red on the gameboard before her. Time, and humanity, had unfortunately turned her into a pantomime. A parody of her once self, trooped out only when needed. Offered just the right amount of supplication to yield the desired bounty, then tucked away, a tool with a purpose and nothing more. That was ever the problem with humans. Once they'd boiled the mystery out of a thing, once they could quantify it, bottle it, have an expectation for it, then so too went any fear of it. And once humans lost fear, they became a blight. But Una had long since learned patience. Humans could be clever and crafty, what they lacked was time, and Una had plenty of that. "King me," Una said using her child voice. It wasn't the voice she used to call the wind, to cultivate growth, to soothe the storm. It was the one she used to placate. May looked down at the board in surprise. Una's new minder was young, not yet having seen 2 decades. She was the right kind of pure, however. The stink of indiscretion and deceit absent from her personage. A curiosity, considering her age. "Well done, Una. I didn't even see that one," May said, and placed a black token crown side up atop the one Una had just moved. Una had liked May the moment she'd seen her outside her prison. Her scent was complicated, like overripe fruit, floral at first, with just a hint of rot beneath the surface. The woman cradled a sadness deep within that Una could taste under her tongue. And there was always opportunity in sadness. They were in Una's room, playing. The walls, floor, and ceiling made of cold concrete. A lifeless substance to be sure. But that was the point, wasn't it? She couldn't be trusted with anything that had begun its life as a seed or spore. Thus, her world was gray. Even her bedding and chairs were of some false material that had never held life of its own. It all felt constricted, like hands around her throat. Una grinned at May, remembering to clap her hands in succession at the compliment. She needed to maintain her glamour. In truth, she liked the praise, regardless that this checkers game was simple. Like watching fox and possum vie for territory amidst bull and root, albeit less bloody. "Will we be able to go outside today?" Una asked, still using her child voice. She'd lived 10 times a human's lifespan and found that communicating with them was often a game of expectation and perception. They saw her as a child, and so she played the part, lest they grow uneasy. It fooled most, May included, but not the doctor. Not Bev Carlson. They knew what she was, or, more specifically, what she wasn't. "Ms. Carlson didn't give us permission for outside time today, but I can ask her about it next time," May said, moving one of her own tokens across the board. Una sighed at the rebuttal. The wind moaned in harmony beyond her window. She moved one of her pieces in kind. The tokens felt ugly on her skin when she touched them. The plastic unnatural, pretending, like a cuckoo brood in a neighboring nest. The game would be over soon, and it wasn't looking to end in May's favor. Una longed to feel the sun on her skin, to hear the clatter of leaves in the breeze. She wasn't meant for these concrete walls with their iron bones, nor the salt upon the threshold. But she'd been an overconfident fool, and the doctor clever for a human. He'd known the old ways to bind her: salt, cold iron, and scorched earth. Yet there was a change in the wind. It had taken years, but she'd whispered in the right ears, sown seeds of discord into this wayward community that had sprung up within her grove to slowly suffocate her like strangle vine. May was just the most recent of those seeds. The bond they'd formed was as pleasant as it was deliberate, but she needed the girl's trust if this was to work. Things were moving quickly now, and it was time to test those bonds. "You've never mentioned who it was you lost," Una said, hanging the statement like a picture on the wall. May's hand halted as she reached for a token. Her eyes tightened at the corners. Una knew it was someone close. That kind of sorrow left a unique scent. "What makes you think I lost someone?" May asked. She was looking down at the game board, but Una could tell she wasn't seeing it anymore. Una shrugged. "The way you sigh. And you often look distracted, like now. And you're sad. I lost someone a long time ago too, and it was like that for me, after." "A long time ago," May said, amused, taking in Una's childlike appearance. Una ignored her. "The thing for me," Una continued, adding more presence to her voice, "was I kept expecting them to just come home again. That I would wake one morning, and they'd be there." The amusement slid from May's face, her expression grave. The silence stretched before she spoke. "It's the reason I came here. To forget, to start again. Now, I just try to stay busy. That way I don't have to think about it." May moved another token. It was a terrible placement, opening her up for multiple jumps. On impulse, Una crawled around the board and caught May up in a hug. It was against the rules. Una's minders weren't supposed to touch her or be touched by her. Una felt May stiffen at the embrace, then slowly relax. "Who were they?" "My mom," she said, her voice thick. I hate that I couldn't help her. I was right there in the house and did nothing, didn't realize what was happening." "It's not your fault," Una said, using the voice she used to coax trees and flowers ahead of bloom. Her voice had once been a tempest but was now a gentle breeze. "It would still do for this, however. If only I'd come out of my room sooner." May's arms came up and encircled Una, her face pressing into Una's shoulder, her tears wet on her neck. Una froze. The warmth of May's flesh like fire on a frosty night, or a beam of sunlight through the cloud cover. When had Una last been touched in any way other than by fear or hate? Una closed her eyes and nuzzled into her. After Mom died, I couldn't sleep, May continued, and when I did, I never wanted to get out of bed. I just felt so empty. Until I met you. It had been years since Una had seen one of her own kind. Felt the hint of their presence, their music, their voice. She understood what the girl was feeling. What do you remember most about her? Una said. They sat back at arm's length, hands held together. She'd loved roses in old movies, May said, wiping at her eyes. She'd say it was cliché, but Mom was a bit of a traditionalist about that stuff. Finally, after weeks, something Una could use. Roses were always my favorite too, Una said. But it's been years since I've smelled one. I'm not allowed anymore. They don't let me out of here. Una saw the questions behind May's eyes. Everyone in the grove thinks you're sick. That Dr. Malcolm brought you here to heal, because this place was special. Is that the fable they were telling these days? Did you know wild roses grow down by the old windmill? Una answered instead. I don't think I've been down there. I could pick a few and bring them though. It could be our secret. Una's smile was genuine as she embraced May again, making sure to layer her presence into it. That would be. What is going on here? Una's shoulders hunched, a hiss building in the back of her throat. She turned toward the voice, teeth bared. Dr. Malcolm stood, eyes wide in the threshold. He swiftly reached out of sight, and a discordant series of notes spilled from the harp hung beyond Una's door, scattering her voice and setting Una's ears to ring painfully. Release her, Una, he commanded using her name. Una's arms pulled away against her will. I think it's time to leave, May. The doctor said. May sniffed, wiping at her eyes. Why, is something wrong? No, everything is fine. I need to speak with Una. Say goodbye, Una. Goodbye, May, Una said through her teeth. May stared apprehensively between the two of them as she stood. It was nice to talk to you, Una. May said, saying her name, but not really using it. She left. Una and the doctor glared at one another until the iron door echoed its closing. This will not go unpunished, Malcolm admonished. Una hissed at him, rage curdling her thoughts into clotted violence. He revealed nothing of his own emotion. Simply closed the door to her room. Una spun, scattering the game board and its pieces with a kick of her foot. She would be punished, she knew, but she'd gotten what she'd wanted. She hoped it was enough. The crop in the western field needs to be sped up, Malcolm said. The Sullivans twins have taken ill, and several of the milk cows have stopped producing. Month blood will be provided to you, as well as ewe's milk, as we've discussed in the past. He checked something off on the parchment using his stylist. The matter settled as far as he was concerned. Laced with holly berries and primrose no doubt, Una spat. Malcolm looked up from his parchment and glanced at Bev Carlson. Una had managed to pluck the woman's name from a young lover of Bev's last year, whilst they'd whispered to one another outside the fence. She kept it now like a lucky stone in her pocket. I want to see May. Una insisted again. It had been days, and Una needed to continue, lest her glamour fade. You know that can't happen, Bev said, her lips narrowed. It will, if you would see your requests fulfilled. Without warning, Malcolm slammed his iron-shod rowan staff into Una's side. She dropped to the floor, the burning iron on her wrists, and now too upon her neck and ankles, jingling as if pleased at her distress. Una screamed. A tremor shook the building. Blinded with pain, Una lost track of how many times she was struck with the rod. As reward, you'll be permitted to stay outside after exerting your presence on the grove. Una, panting on the concrete, hardly heard him. You know the rules. You will not see May again. Una settled herself and glared up at Malcolm. Burn and scorch your rules. The girl, or I refuse. Use my name as you like, you know it cannot compel me in that way. You would kill the girl, Bev admonished from her space against the opposite wall. You would kill her, Una replied. I merely seek companionship. Silence stretched through the room. The twins will likely die without aid, Bev conceded, stepping close to Malcolm. He hesitated, then turned to Una, knuckles white where he gripped the staff. This girl's death will be on your conscience. You'll find me another, Una replied evenly. She marveled at how naturally it came for humans to blame their actions on others. The full moon is tomorrow, Malcolm said, turning toward Bev. I'll lead our people in the chant before the oak. You can bring her, he said, flicking his hand toward Una. What she requires. I'd have May with me, Una reminded, sitting up and crossing her legs before her. So be it, Malcolm answered, then stormed out of her concrete prison. It's unwise to push him so, Bev said, coming to sit before her. Soon, neither of us will have to worry about that, Una replied. Soon, it will be up to you to lead. Satisfaction reeked from the woman. If she had been a cat, she'd have purred. Shane and the others are ready. Bev agreed. The transition shouldn't be difficult, merely tedious. And fear not, I'll be far kinder to you than he. Soon we'll have it like it was before. Una nodded, pleased to see her efforts coming to fruition. Hopefully. Bring me the girl, Bev, Una said, using her name. Just before moonrise, Una needed rest. Malcolm had hurt her, though she'd never give him the satisfaction of how severely. No matter, it'd be her turn soon. It was a warm night for late autumn. The voices of insects, frogs, and nightbirds raised in concert, sensing Una's own would join them this evening. She could feel the townsfolk gathered around the old oak at the top of the hill, like insects upon her skin. Even now, the first sound of voices raised in unison were carried on the breeze. Her skin tingled with it. Behind, her prison squatted like a beetle a short distance away. Garish concrete amidst black dirt and charred timber. Una spat in its direction. It had been nearly a month since she'd been permitted outdoors. True, the wall around her dampened the view of her grove, but simply being in the open air was glorious despite the scent of char and the dead salted earth beneath her toes. Humans scorched everything regularly within the fence to prevent growth. She felt it every time, like flame put to her own flesh. The creak of hinges heralded an arrival at the gate. Bev and May glowed in the moonlight as they stepped through, the younger woman taller by several hands. Una glimpsed other faces beyond the threshold. Bev's new regime, Shane, Beth, and a few others. The rest would be mixed in with people around the oak. I've brought her, Una, Bev said. She glanced pityingly toward May. We go to join the others. I'll come for you afterward. They left, and it was just the two of them. I'm glad you're here, May, Una said, and found it was true. Me too. It's a lovely night, though it feels odd to miss the ceremony. You're not missing it, merely seeing it from a different view. Una felt it then, blood added to the roots of her oak. The offer traveling through the ground to surge upward into her. The voices chanted louder than before. Joined by others, united in purpose. May paused a short distance from her. This is all for you, isn't it? She said, gesturing toward the hill. I'd wondered, but I never would have imagined. The ewe's milk was added, and Una gasped. The offering unpolluted, pure, and invigorating. She fell to her knees, burying her hands into the coarse dirt. May was beside her a moment later. Her hand on Una's back. Una glanced over and saw true concern on the girl's face. What are you? Una lifted her voice, and sang. Her revitalized presence quested outward amidst her grove, to the struggling field, infusing its soil with nutrients, to the twin boys dangerously sick with fever, she struck it from them, to the dry cows near the barn, soothing the inflammation in their glands. She'd given her word, and by her word she was bound. Around her, seedlings scorched and ruined flared to life for a moment, then withered and died, too poisoned or seared to retain life. Una came back to herself slowly, just herself. Out in the darkness, the sound of screams shattered the night. Fear and awe reeked from May, some for Una, most for what was happening on the hill. Her hand found Una's, gripping it tight. Una felt the blood soaking the ground around the old oak. Bev had been busy. Sadly, it hadn't been spilled in offering. She frowned at the waste. Had hoped Bev in her zeal would slip and offer it. So much for that part of her plan. She didn't have much time. Listen, she said, gripping May by the shoulders. I am what this grove is. Bound for decades by Malcolm, tortured and manipulated for your kind's prosperity. The squeal of the gate resounded through the yard. Bev had come too soon. Likely having sensed Una would try to flee. From over May's shoulder, Una watched Bev, rowan staff in hand, stride toward where they knelt. Behind her fanned out a small group of people, their clothing and hands bloodied. Come Una, Malcolm is dead, kneel before your new master. Bev had learned her name. That was unfortunate. Una trembled as she was forced to her feet. May rose with her, obstructing Una's view of the group. Something sharp pressed into Una's hands, piercing her flesh. The scent of roses filled her nose. Oh, good girl, Una whispered, and kissed May on the cheek. Una snapped the stems and pressed them to her skin. Using her voice to cultivate, she grafted them within her flesh. Rosebuds rapidly began to flourish and bloom along her arms and shoulders, her fingers elongated, twisting to stem-like thorny protrusions to explode outward, wrapping Bev Carlson in writhing, screaming agony. Una knelt before her, reveling in it. Bev wouldn't be the last to suffer tonight. I'm afraid my captivity is at an end, Master.